Obi-Wan is probably one of my favorite characters from like the whole Star Wars universe, and I'm pretty sure I'm not alone on that, so it was very important for Disney not to ruin this character when making this show, and I think they definitely succeeded in keeping him true to how he was in the prequels, at least in my opinion from what I remember about him. I do like the idea that his connection to the Force became weaker after everything that happened during the Clone Wars and after essentially killing Anakin as far as he knew. And it was interesting to see the whole process he had to go through to strengthen or re-strengthen that connection, because I do think it makes sense for, you know, if you were a Jedi Master, you have to kill your student because your student fucking killed a bunch of Jedi, like, younglings. You would probably feel responsible, and your connection to the Force would probably be jaded, or your perception of the Force would probably be jaded in a sense, and I think it's an interesting development for the character. What I'm trying to say basically is that the problems from the show don't stem from Obi-Wan at all. His character arc is extremely interesting to me, and it has a very satisfying ending. They mostly stem from the supporting cast, or at least somewhat, because for the most part, I actually think the show is really good. I actually think it was excellent. There's some problems here and there, sure, but for the most part, it was really good. I'll go over the few problems that I had. First being that Leia was good, honestly, before I even start, Leia was good, but only towards the end, because at the beginning she was just an annoying kid, and I get it, she's a kid, but that doesn't mean I'm not annoyed watching her do dumb shit just to make Obi-Wan's life harder. Also, Obi-Wan could have explained the situation a little better when he was rescuing her from her kidnappers, just so, you know, she wouldn't misunderstand, but at the same time, she didn't really look like she was willing to listen, so I'm not too mad at that whole section. I kind of understand what they were doing with that. What I don't understand is the chase in the first episode, I think it was completely ridiculous, and it's already been ripped to shreds, and I'm sure everybody's already heard of it, seen how ridiculous it is. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. It was just silly. But that's basically it, I think, for the problems that I had. Mostly, it was just Leia at the beginning, and she got so much better towards the end that it honestly doesn't even matter all that much. Reva is also another character that is kind of controversial, but I didn't really see why people hated her so much, I'm going to be honest. She was fine, and she honestly did not take that much space in the show. Like, sure, she was one of the more important secondary characters, but I never felt like she overstayed her welcome. She never has, like, that much screen time, especially compared to Obi-Wan, so before I even watched the show, I heard so much shit talking about Reva, and I cannot say I understand where it comes from. She was a very aggressive character because of what happened to her, but honestly, can you blame her? Like, she's working under the dude who cleared out all her friends. Like, man, you'd be angry too. If anything, it's a miracle that she kept it under wraps for as long as she did. So I don't really feel the type of way about Reva's character, but I definitely don't dislike her. And I also really like how the Inquisitors are kind of all over the recent Star Wars projects being released, like Rebels, Fallen Order, and now this. They're interesting characters, and they can still be fleshed out since we haven't even seen all of the Inquisitors, and I think it's a nice touch because it makes the Empire a little bit more interesting, and I think that's needed considering the fact that we're still covering events relating to Anakin after all this time. And you would think that there'd be some kind of fatigue by now because we've been in like the Skywalker saga for essentially almost the entirety of canon Star Wars works. But honestly, Kenobi has me wanting more of Vader. It really does. I think we need a Vader Disney Plus show, like of him just going about dealing with trauma relating to his life as Anakin and the atrocities that he's committed, you know, maybe dealing with that and then actually, you know, being Vader. There's kind of a little bit of that in the show, but I'd want like a full look into like Vader's psyche and stuff, or even just him just doing nothing and fucking with his henchmen. I don't care. I just need more Vader. He steals the spotlight in literally every scene that he's in, and it's not even close. Like, it's not even remotely close. And they managed to make him so imposing, and the only time that he looks like he could be defeated is during that final fight, but to be fair, he was fighting someone who had just gotten a little boost. Otherwise, he's basically unstoppable, and I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of amazing to watch. I think my favorite scene is probably when he lands on the planet where Obi-Wan is hiding towards the beginning of the show, and he's just killing civilians for literally no reason that he's walking by. He's just taking them out for free. And yes, I'm aware that does sound psychotic on my part, but hear me out. He just looks so cool doing it. The lightsaber duels are also much better in this than they were in the sequel trilogy, I'd say. Rey and Kylo just look like they're just swinging very aggressively for the most part, and the duels just don't seem as choreographed as they were in the prequels, or at least that's how I remember the sequel duels. And that's kind of how Vader fights But it makes sense in my opinion for Vader because he's just like a rage monster, and Anakin showed flashes of that fighting style before he even turned into Vader. So it's not like too weird. But with Obi-Wan, it's more like a dance, and it's just pretty to look at, honestly. And I'm not saying that the sequel fights are shit. It's just that the prequel fights are definitely the most visually appealing out of any Star Wars fights, and I like that we got more of those, or that style of fighting, rather than the sequel style of fighting. There's also another fight with Vader where he doesn't even use his lightsaber. He essentially just duels with the Force, and it was amazing because I haven't seen anything like that before, at least not to that extent. And it's a great display of power by him, and it's probably one of my favorite fights in like live action Star Wars. It's so simple, but it's such a strong display of like how overpowering he is over literally everybody. I've just been gushing about Vader this whole time, but it's because he's actually so amazing, and every time you think you've had enough, you see him again and it's like, nah, give me more Vader. Give me a show, give me a movie, give me a trilogy, a Vader trilogy. I don't care what you do, I just need more Vader. And based on where the season ended, I don't think we really need another, season of Obi-Wan necessarily, because this basically sets up Old Man Kenobi and all the other characters perfectly, including Vader, for A New Hope. And any other story would just be extra, but I want some extra. I would love a second season of Kenobi. I don't even know what it could be about. I'll always take more Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan, and maybe even Hayden Christensen as Vader if the opportunity arises, because they're just amazing. Overall, I'm going to give the hopefully first and not last season of Obi-Wan an 8. I think that some things were dragged out just a tiny bit. Some episodes were weaker than others. So maybe just for consistency, I'm docking it 2 points. But overall, it's an excellent show, and I think any fan of Star Wars is going to find something here for them.